I'm 85. My kids stopped visiting. Here is what I did. 847 days. That's how long it's been since my daughter last walked through that door. I know because I counted. Every single day, I'd sit in this chair, look at the calendar, and mark another X. 847 X's, a graveyard of days. My son, it's been even longer. 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days since I heard his voice. Not that I'm counting. I'm 85. What else do I have to do but count? I used to be somebody else. Somebody useful. I was the one they called at 2 a.m. when the baby wouldn't stop crying. I was the one who showed up with soup when they were sick. I was the one who babysat, who cooked, who cleaned, who gave. I gave until there was nothing left to give. And then one day, the phone just stopped ringing. At first, I made excuses for them. They're busy, they have careers, they have kids, they have lives. I understand. I raised them to be independent. I raised them to not need me. I did my job too well, I guess. But then weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. And that's when the excuses stopped working. I remember the exact moment I realized something was terribly wrong. It was my 83rd birthday. I baked a cake, the same yellow cake with chocolate frosting I'd made for them every year when they were little. I set the table, 3 plates, 3 forks, 3 napkins. I put on my good dress, sat down, and waited. The cake sat there for 3 days before I finally threw it away. I ate the whole thing myself, piece by piece, crying into every bite. That's when I knew they weren't coming, but here's the part I haven't told anyone, the part that still wakes me up at night. I know why they stopped coming. It was 2019, Thanksgiving. The whole family was here, both kids, their spouses, 4 grandkids running around. The house was loud, the way I like it. Turkey in the oven, pie cooling on the counter, my mother's china, the good stuff, set out on the table. And then my son said something small, something he probably doesn't even remember. Mom, can you not tell that story again? The one about when I was little? It's embarrassing. I laughed it off, said, it's my job to embarrass you. I'm your mother. But he wasn't laughing. None of them were laughing. And for the first time, I looked around that room and realized they weren't enjoying my stories. They were tolerating them. There's a difference. The rest of the dinner was quiet, polite, strangers eating together. I kept waiting for someone to say something, to break the tension, to be my family again. No one did. Before they left, my daughter pulled me aside. Mom, maybe next time, can we just do a simple dinner? Less, less. Less what? I wanted to ask. Less love? Less effort? Less me? I said okay. I always say okay. But that night, after everyone left, I sat in this same chair and I looked at the mess, the dirty dishes, the leftovers, the crumbs on the floor, and I thought, they don't want my stories. They don't want my food. They don't want my love. Not the way I give it. So I stopped giving it, not on purpose, not as punishment. I just didn't know how anymore. Every time I picked up the phone, I heard my son's voice. Can you not tell that story? Every time I baked cookies, I saw my daughter's face. Less. So I stopped calling, stopped baking, stopped inviting, and they stopped coming. 847 days. For the first year, I didn't leave this house much. What was the point? The world outside kept moving, but I felt like I'd been paused, frozen, stuck in a moment I couldn't escape. I'd wake up, make tea, sit in this chair, and stare at the wall, sometimes for hours, sometimes all day. The TV would be on, but I wasn't watching, just noise, just something to fill the silence that was slowly eating me alive. My neighbor, Ruth, she's 78, lost her husband 5 years ago, started checking on me. Every morning, she'd knock on my door with a muffin or a magazine or some story about her cat. I'd smile, say thank you, and close the door. I didn't want company. I wanted my children. But Ruth is stubborn, more stubborn than me, which is saying something. One day she didn't knock. She just walked in, found me in this chair, same as always. She sat down across from me and said, "Eleanor, how long are you going to do this?" Do what? Disappear. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell her to mind her own business, but instead I started crying. Not pretty crying, ugly crying, the kind where your nose runs and your face turns red and you can't breathe. Ruth didn't say a word. She just sat there and let me cry for an hour, maybe longer. When I finally stopped, she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Your kids left. That's their choice. But you're still here. That's your choice. So what are you going to do with it?" I didn't have an answer. Not that day. Not the next day. But that question, it sat with me, followed me around. What are you going to do with it? So I started doing small things. Not big things. Small. First I started walking, just to the end of the street and back. The first time my knees hurt so bad I almost turned around. But I didn't. I kept walking, every day, a little farther each time. Then I started gardening, the garden my husband and I had planted together. It had been neglected for years. After Thomas passed, I couldn't bear to look at it. Weeds everywhere, dead plants. It looked the way I felt. So I got on my knees, slowly, painfully, and I started pulling weeds, one at a time, for hours. My back screamed, my hands bled, but every weed I pulled felt like something lifting off my chest. Then I found Thomas's old woodworking tools in the garage. He was the woodworker, not me. But one afternoon, out of pure boredom, I picked up a piece of scrap wood and a chisel. I had no idea what I was doing. I cut myself twice. The thing I made looked like a deformed birdhouse. But I made it, with my own hands, for no one but me. And slowly, something started shifting. Not the situation with my kids. That was still silent. But something inside me. The weight. The heaviness. It didn't disappear, but it lightened. Just a little. Enough to breathe. I started going to the senior center, not because I wanted to, but because Ruth dragged me. You need people, Eleanor, even if you don't want them. She was right. I hated that she was right. At the center, I met Frank. Frank is 82, widowed, grumpy as hell, and the best chess player I've ever lost to. We play every Tuesday. He wins most games. I don't care. It's not about winning. It's about showing up. I met Dolores, who teaches painting. She convinced me to try a class. My first painting was terrible, a blob that was supposed to be a flower. But the second one was better. The third one I actually hung on my wall. It's not good, but it's mine. And somewhere in all of this, I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. 6 months ago, something happened that I didn't expect. I was in the garden, on my knees, covered in dirt, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked up and there she was, my daughter, standing at the gate, just standing there. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I didn't know what to say. 847 days, and I had nothing. She walked toward me slowly, like I might run away. When she got close, she looked at the garden, really looked at it, and said, "Mom, this is beautiful." I didn't say anything. I just kept digging. She knelt down beside me, in her good clothes, in the dirt, and she started helping. No explanation, no apology, just pulling weeds next to me. We worked in silence for maybe 20 minutes. Then she said, "I don't know why I stopped coming. I don't have a good reason. I just got busy, and then more time passed, and I didn't know how to come back. I thought you'd be angry." I looked at her, my daughter, 47 years old, and she looked like a little girl afraid of being scolded. I said, "I'm not angry. I was sad. There's a difference." She cried. I didn't, not because I wasn't emotional, I was, but because I had already cried all my tears. For 847 days, I had cried enough for both of us. We finished the garden together that afternoon. She stayed for dinner. We ate on the porch, watching the sunset. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magic. It was just two people trying. My son hasn't come yet. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. That's his journey, not mine. But here's what I've learned, sitting in this garden at 85 years old. You can't wait for someone else to give you permission to live. I spent 2 years disappearing because my children stopped visiting. I made their absence the center of my world. I let their silence define my worth. And in doing so, I abandoned myself the same way I felt they had abandoned me. But here's the truth they don't tell you. Sometimes the person who needs to come back to you is you. I had to come back to myself. I had to remember who I was before I was someone's mother, before I was someone's wife, before I was someone's caretaker. I had to find Eleanor again, the one who laughed, who painted, who planted, who built things with her hands. And you know what? She was still there, buried under years of giving, under expectations, under disappointment, but still there. So if you're sitting there in your quiet house, waiting for a call that might never come, I need you to hear this. Put the phone down, go outside, feel the sun on your face, plant something, build something, break something if you have to. But don't sit there disappearing while you wait for someone else to notice you're gone. Your children may come back, they may not, but you're still here, and that means something. That means everything. The garden doesn't care who visits. It blooms anyway. That's the lesson. That's the truth. That's what took me 85 years to learn. Now think about your own life. How long have you been waiting for someone to notice your garden? How many days have you wasted hoping they'd show up? How much of yourself have you abandoned while waiting for love that never came? The hard truth? The love you're begging for should never have to be begged for. So here's my question to you, not as a stranger, but as someone who's been where you are. What's one thing you'll start doing for yourself starting tomorrow? Not for them, for you. Maybe it's picking up that hobby you left behind. Maybe it's taking that walk you keep postponing. Maybe it's just sitting in silence, not waiting, just being. Whatever it is, do it. And if you want, come back and tell us what you did, because your story might be the exact push someone else needs to finally start living. We're all in this garden together. Some of us just forgot we were holding the seeds. Life is short, and you've waited long enough.